Even if you have read and understood the data in Part 1, you still have only identified one small and very negative aspect of the big picture. The full story is much deeper than most people could even imagine, and reads like an epic series of sci-fi novels, with great surprises in each new volume. Cosmic disclosure is not fake news. If you are a viewer of our weekly Gaia show Cosmic Disclosure, or have been following previous updates on Corey Goode's intel, then you are already familiar with this new reality. Corey's experiences are so highly bizarre that most people identifying as skeptics couldn't even follow us more than 10% of the way, if that. Nonetheless, Corey's intel has checked out with what many, many other high-level sources have leaked to me over 20 years of time. The truth is extremely surprising and complex. The intel also dovetails beautifully with the material in the Law of One series, which I have scientifically validated in 3 different published books with over 2,200 total references. The Cabal has now taken the incredibly brazen step of blacklisting 200 highly popular sites, including Gaia, our main portal for Disclosure TV episodes. They are using Google, Facebook, Apple, Snapchat, and other assets to prevent you from ever being able to find these sites, even if your friends wanted you to see them. YouTube has begun aggressively taking down every person posting videos on this scandal, including all 3 we mentioned in Part 1, David Seaman, Reality Calls, and the Alex Jones video. This is the work of a third world fascist dictatorship, hardly what we would expect in a democracy. If this was truly all just a big misunderstanding, why are they being so aggressive? Why block Gaia? Why would Gaia have made it onto the short list of 200 Cabal-banned sites if Cosmic Disclosure was just a big joke? How did we end up threatening the media elite enough that they literally do not want you to have any chance of finding it, even if your friends sent you the link on Facebook or Gmail? From the world we are working within, the answer is simple. Child trafficking and spirit cooking at the highest political levels is still just the very beginning. The whole subject of UFOs, ancient civilizations, advanced technology, and ETs has been strictly controlled by this very negative cabal. Much of this classified information is incredibly positive and uplifting, including the idea of an imminent mass human evolution that many refer to as ascension. The Cabal is the proverbial dragon guarding the pile of gold and treasure, and the gorgeous virgin being held prisoner. If this group wasn't restricting our access to information, we would be living in a vastly more interesting world right now, with much greater technology. Is Corey telling the truth? By working around Corey for an average of 1 out of every 6 weeks over the last 2 years, I have seen ample evidence that he is telling the truth, as he has seen and experienced it. We have endured death threats, betrayal, financial hardship, and incredibly toxic abuse. This journey has not at all been fun or easy for him, nor for me. This is a spiritual war, not just a physical one. The Cabal is messing around with very real forces that are extremely negative and can influence those around us. It is all too easy to make mistakes and authorize attacks to come your way from these same forces. In my case, it comes mainly through the interference of others. This has been extremely difficult and exhausting, but it all reads as fairly mundane stuff in the worldly sense. In Corey's case, he has had very horrible physical experiences that most would consider paranormal, including being abducted by various human or ET groups. The only way we can protect ourselves is to try to have as positive and loving of an attitude as possible. Nothing else is sufficient. It is a moment-by-moment discipline. 5 different group categories, all requesting assistance. We also have 5 different major categories of groups that are now feeding us intel and requesting our assistance. We will learn more about each of them as this update goes on. Each of these groups is fighting as hard as they can to transform our planet and have suffered horrible casualties along the way. Number 1, the Earth Alliance. This is the group Dr. Pachenik spoke on behalf of in Part 1. It is comprised of brave fighters in all 15 of the U.S. intelligence agencies and many international factions. Number 2, the MIC-SSP, Military Industrial Complex Secret Space Program. This is a series of factions that believed they were the only game in town up until recently. They are about to be publicly revealed. Number 3, the SSP Alliance. This is a breakaway group within an SSP that is much more advanced than the MIC version. The SSP is controlled by the Cabal, but the SSP Alliance is definitely not. Number 4, the Inner Earth Alliance. There are several different human ET civilizations living in huge caverns beneath the Earth's surface. Each racial type we see on Earth appears in these groups. Number 5, the Sphere Being Alliance. This is a group of super advanced ETs that have been called the Guardians and manage the spiritual and physical affairs of entire solar systems. It is not easy to have requests consistently coming at us from all 5 of these different groups, with the message always being that each new piece of intel is extremely urgent to disclose. We keep getting pounded with obstacles and challenges while trying to navigate and meet these expectations. Despite periodic lapses in both of our productivity levels, Cosmic Disclosure has continued to come out with a new episode every week, uninterrupted. We are now under direct attack by the Cabal, as they are trying to wipe us out of existence with a total internet blackout. Gaia has several weekly shows with more on the way, as well as over 7,000 unique pieces of inspirational and truth-telling media to watch. The speed and function of the Gaia site has improved considerably, and if you have ever thought about signing up for $10 a month, we need you now. Thanks. With AirPlay, an inexpensive Roku box, a Google Play, a PlayStation, or an Xbox, you can watch it on your big screen TV in crisp, clean HD and hardly any delays. The Cabal's final salvage plan. What we are hearing from various insiders now is that the Cabal is on the verge of total defeat for the first time in our entire global history. The Alliance has become ever increasingly powerful as more and more people defect to it. The Cabal knows they are out of time, and as of right now they have largely completed their negotiations on how they will surrender. At the same time, the Cabal has dirt on the Earth Alliance that they do not want to see go public. Therefore, it is turned into more of a truce, where we will get part but not all of the truth. This is what we have been calling partial disclosure. We are against this happening, and will continue fighting for full disclosure, which will be much better for everyone. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are aware of what we've disclosed, and no one has freaked out about any of it. The excuse that you can't handle the truth is nonsense. The SSP Alliance, Inner Earth Alliance, and Sphere Being Alliance are all pushing for full disclosure as well, which they call the optimal temporal reality for our future. What is partial disclosure shaping up to look like? The partial disclosure plan includes some admission of wrongdoing, an outing and punishing of mid-level people, and a beneficial global financial reset. The cosmic aspect of the plan appears to involve 3 key revelations, perhaps in different stages. Number 1, a formal public disclosure of the MIC-SSP. They have 2 large cloaked orbital platforms, flying black triangle craft, and the ability to travel throughout our solar system. Number 2, the unveiling of ancient high-tech ruins in Antarctica that have been newly excavated. This will prove that Atlantis was very real and far more advanced than we thought. Number 3, the revealing of extremely ancient ruins over 1.8 billion with a B years old. within the Earth and throughout our solar system, often made of a crystalline, transparent aluminum alloy. Although this sounds pretty awesome and would be a great leap forward, this is still only a partial disclosure that leaves gaping holes in our understanding. Another potential plan that is in the optional category involves the possible disclosure of a single ET group known as the Tall Whites. This is the group that Charles Hall and others have met up with. The Cabal might try to introduce us to this group, explain they have been around for a really long time, and hope that they can get us to follow a mystical new religion offered by these beings. This would definitely not be in humanity's best interest. The rapidly escalating downfall of high-level elite human trafficking rings is bringing these issues to the immediate forefront. The Cabal has run out of time, and they know it. For many years, they have planned on using a partial disclosure to distract and inspire the public if the full nature of their crimes were to become known. The details have all been laid out. Much of the history and scientific research to support this data, as well as the full disclosure version, was written into my new book, The Ascension Mysteries, in an effort to help the Alliance groups. The partial disclosure scenario may not include any active ET life operating around us today. The MIC SSP's party line will be that apart from ancient visitors, or perhaps an occasional gray or tall white, we are alone. The first 2 episodes of the recently rebooted X-Files TV show were a veritable blueprint for the partial disclosure of the military-industrial complex's secret space program and its entire belief system. The MIC SSP does not have the technology to travel outside our solar system, so we would still be kept in a box, just a slightly larger version. The SSP has much greater technology that could heal our planet. The Cabal could still secretly pursue their depopulation agenda as the partial disclosure unfolded over a 50 to 100 year period. The Cabal is hoping to rebrand itself as the good guys as this partial disclosure scenario rolls out. It is their last and only chance to save their agenda. Without further ado, I will hand the microphone over to Corey, who will continue our story from here with my co-authored input. It is well worth your time to learn about what is going on. The Secret Space Program by Corey Good with David Wilcock. Narrated by David Wilcock. By now you are probably aware that I, Corey Good, am a 20-year veteran of a secret space program, SSP, that has technology vastly superior to anything we see in the open world. David Wilcock had been gathering a variety of insider testimonies for nearly 20 years when I began disclosing everything I knew to him in October 2014. He was able to validate my testimony by having heard many of the same things from other high-level insiders at cosmic top-secret level and above. The majority of this insider testimony was completely off the public record and did not appear anywhere online, nor in any alleged fiction in the public domain. There were so many points of correlation that we stopped counting somewhere after identifying about 60 different highly specific examples. David's knowledge of hyper-classified intel similarly convinced me that he was in contact with people who had experienced the same world that I had. He gained these contacts through being a highly public scholar in UFOs and alternative science who had proven over many years that he could be entrusted with confidentiality. It is hard to imagine. The level of secrecy involved is so high that it is hard for most people to even begin to imagine the world of the SSP. An experience inside a true SSP base on Earth or elsewhere in our solar system would appear very similar to a scene from the movie Men in Black or Guardians of the Galaxy. An ever-increasing number of seemingly fictional movies, television shows, and video games are preparing us for an eventual disclosure. Some groups on Earth have been aware that we are not alone and have remained in active contact with extraterrestrials for thousands of years. Many more became involved when the Germans developed flying saucer technology with ET assistance in the 1930s. A vastly interconnected breakaway civilization has since developed, almost completely without any public awareness. William Tompkins independently validates. William Tompkins was unaware of me or any of my testimony when he wrote Selected by Extraterrestrials. Ours has strictly been an internet-based story, and Tompkins is a 94-year-old veteran who is not online. During World War II, he debriefed 29 different U.S. spies embedded in the German SSP at the time. There are many astonishing points of correlation between what the two of us are saying, again, far beyond any likelihood of chance. Interviews with Tompkins were conducted for Gaia before he knew anything about my testimony, but it all lines up beautifully. There are several episodes where we compare these knowledge bases, and the results are very surprising. Contact was reawakened. I had basically been out of the loop in the SSP since the late 1980s, except for a number of encounters with them in the 1990s and early 2000s that were all very brief missions. Much to my surprise, I was brought back into this world approximately 4 months after David and I began comparing notes. I was taken to a base on the moon that I was already familiar with, entitled the Lunar Operations Command, or LOC. By this point, David had gathered the bulk of my testimony together and had thoroughly briefed the senior management of Gaia on the story. I was quite surprised to discover that an alliance had formed within the SSP that wanted to share their remarkable technology with the general population of Earth. This alliance partially arose out of the SSP faction I worked within, known as Solar Warden. There are a total of 5 different SSP factions, and Solar Warden is made up of members from all 5 of them. The Solar Warden code name was also discovered by the hacker Gary McKinnon and was independently verified by William Tompkins. Sphere Being Alliance Ambassador. The SSP is already engaged with a diverse community of over 900 different human-like civilizations that they have regular, ongoing trade with, as well as less frequent contact with many others. I became a conduit for the SSP Alliance to speak with a group of highly powerful, positive ETs that had remained mysterious up until then. These beings arrived in hundreds of gigantic spheres parked throughout our solar system. The spheres have been coming in since the late 1990s and have remained cloaked ever since. David was aware of the spheres ever since they first arrived, as they were often being seen on NASA's own SOHO satellite and were referred to as sun cruisers. No other ET group had anything that was anywhere near this large in size, so it naturally was quite a source of interest. Gonzalez was the key. The man on the inside who ended up bringing me into this world again has been given the pseudonym Lieutenant Colonel Gonzalez for security reasons. He had experienced in-person contact with the sphere beings while in the SSP at about the same time I had experienced similar contacts while living here in America. Gonzalez did not report these encounters up the chain of command for some time, nor did I tell anyone about what I had experienced. In late February 2015, the sphere beings asked for me by name through Gonzalez. He did not know who I was, and his superiors had to look me up and figure it out. Up until I was requested by name, the sphere beings had completely refused to interact with the SSP Alliance, even though the Alliance felt they were trying to do something positive for humanity. The negative ETs will seek out contact with the most wealthy, powerful elites on Earth to promote their tyrannical, dictatorial, service-to-self message. The positive ETs seek contact with those who can help share their message of love, peace, and service to others. Thrown in the middle. I effectively got thrown into the middle of a debate between the SSP Alliance and the Sphere Beings. Furthermore, the Sphere Beings wanted me to serve as their ambassador, sharing their perspective not just with the SSP Alliance, but with the general public on Earth. They are here to help guide us through an epic human evolutionary event that many call ascension. I have been told this will involve a massive release of energy from the sun that triggers advancements in DNA and consciousness. Wilcock's new book, The Ascension Mysteries, has references to ancient prophecies of such an event from many different cultures. The giant spheres are a form of living technology that is used to help smooth out this transition as much as possible. Without the help of the spheres, such a transition would likely be catastrophic and largely unpredictable. The Blue Avians. The main ET group I've interacted with has been the Blue Avians, a race of humanoids with large eyes and bird-like blue feathers on their bodies. We have since discovered that this is the same group that presented itself to the Egyptians through avian-looking humanoid gods such as Ra and possibly also Thoth. Their originally positive teachings were greatly distorted into the negative, as was described in the Law of One series. William Henry found ancient depictions of blue avians in Egyptian and other cultures, as reported in Cosmic Disclosure. Bird-headed humanoids are seen in Babylonian and South American inscriptions, as well as those of Egypt. Certain Bible passages describe Archangel Gabriel as having a bird-like appearance. Native American cultures also reported contact with the bird tribes, and the Japanese had the Tengu birdmen of the mountains. The Blue Avians are one of 5 mysterious, highly advanced ET races that are associated with the giant spheres. The Law of One series. Additionally, the Blue Avians have now absolutely confirmed that they were responsible for the creation of the Law of One series from 1981 to 1984. This was a series of 106 question and answer sessions between a PhD physicist and ufologist and an extraterrestrial intelligence communicating telepathically through Carla Ruckert. David had been studying the Law of One material heavily since 1996 and had already written 2 New York Times best-selling books on its complex science before we ever started talking. With that being said, the main Blue Avian I am in contact with, Ra Tier Air, has given us a warning about quoting from the Law of One as if it were a religion. He said many people are starting to quote chapter and verse from it and use it as a belief system that all new information has to meld with or be questioned and possibly rejected. They made it clear that there are certain distortions in the Law of One material that came from the people at L&L Research who presented it. If we make it into a bedrock belief system, it can create a personal religion that can be damaging for the individual in their emotional and spiritual evolution. Ultimately, we must all exercise our own discernment and choose for ourselves what the truth is, without ever worshiping any particular document or source. Telepathic contacts. It is also important to note that David has had telepathic contact with these same beings, such as through nightly dream analysis, ever since November 10th, 1996. Due to cosmic laws of free will, David has still never experienced the type of in-person contacts that are now happening to me. He has been given a roadmap of stages to go through that could lead to these contacts, and writing his new book, Awakening in the Dream, appears to be one key part of that process. Since I had already been a part of the SSP in the 1980s, it did not violate my free will to be brought back into it later in life. This almost obsessive focus with preserving free will is a regular element of every session of the Law of One series. Complex and multifaceted. This story is complex and multifaceted, far beyond anything I would ever dream of trying to invent. This has also not been a profitable move for me to make. I would have had a significantly higher income if I was able to go back into the IT field instead of continuing to fight for full disclosure, as I am now doing. In the course of this work as an ambassador, I have come face to face with the highest levels of both the positive and the negative sides of this battle. Some of these experiences have been so profoundly unpleasant that I can only laugh when people say they wish they could be in my shoes. The full narrative arc has been traced out in Cosmic Disclosure, our show on Gaia, as well as in these updates at spherebeingalliance.com and at David's website, divinecosmos.com. Various characters in the story. I have also met up with an alliance of human-looking beings living in huge habitable caverns inside the earth. My main contact therein is a priestess named Kari. As described in previous updates, I also recently was introduced to an ambassador from a planet in a nearby star system that recently overthrew their own negative ET-driven tyranny. His name is Ambassador Mika. They are now working predominantly through dream contacts to help educate us on how to achieve our own freedom from these malevolent beings. Lieutenant Commander Gonzalez was my original contact with the SSP Alliance, and he continues to pass along intel at this time, as seen below. He originally presented himself as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. This was his cover ID, and I recently found out he was actually a lieutenant commander in the Navy. Lastly, I have been interacting with a more Earth-based SSP that is run by the Military Industrial Complex, MIC. The MIC SSP is unaware of the greater space program I was a part of, as we will discuss. So now, without further ado, we will pick up where we left off in the previous update at spherebeingalliance.com and in prior episodes of Cosmic Disclosure. A visit from the MIC SSP. Once again, in the early morning hours of Wednesday, October 26, 2016, I awoke to find that I was walking in the parking lot behind my house. This type of sleepwalking technology is standard fare for the Military Industrial Complex MIC space program group that has been contacting me in the recent past. I immediately noticed the same stealth-looking MIC wingless craft that I was taken in last time. It was parked in the same place it had been in the last time I was taken. The same two airmen greeted me and asked me if I was physically able to walk up the stairs. Since I had almost fallen after my knee buckled the last time they contacted me, they seemed as though they were being overly cautious. I went up the stairs, entered the craft, and was brought to the familiar room where I had been chemically interrogated before. This naturally caused me to feel extreme anxiety, since the original interrogations I went through were not pleasant, to say the least. I was asked to sit in the same seat and was buckled in. Once again, I was helpless, shackled into the same chair where I had suffered greatly in the past. I soon heard the craft power up, and we lifted off fairly quickly. A visit from Sigmund. A few minutes later, the older military man who was in charge came into the room. Since he has white hair and a white goatee, we have decided to call him Sigmund in an homage to Freud. Sigmund stated that he was a bit perplexed at the information he had received from our last encounter. In addition to enhanced interrogation through chemicals and technology, he had previously taken blood, hair, and skin samples and tested them for trace elements, using very advanced methods. The lab results once again confirmed that I had been in the approximate off-planet locations that I had claimed. The MIC space program people do not have any intelligence suggesting I had ever actually visited these locations. I was never a part of their program. For this same reason, Sigmund clearly could not believe what he was seeing. My tests proved beyond any shadow of doubt that there was much more to the secret space program than he knew. As a high-ranking superior officer, this naturally came as quite a shock to him. He was led to believe that he had access to all relevant compartments of the classified world. The MIC are not the only game in town. The people in the MIC space program have been taught that theirs is the only one that exists. They believe they are the top of the crop, the best of the best, the be-all and end-all. Since there is a plan in place to disclose their existence, we will now reveal as much about them as possible, so you can get a sense of what they do and don't know. They are aware of the existence of Luciferian cabal groups, practicing very advanced black magic on a global scale. This includes exacting protocols of performing specific ceremonies at specific times. It also involves hiding out in the open and telling us what they are doing in symbolic form. Events like the Grammy Awards, the Super Bowl halftime show, or the Olympics opening and closing ceremonies are used to broadcast occult images to millions of people. This, in turn, authorizes the negative forces they are working with to exact greater control over the earth and enhance their worldly power, as long as no widespread resistance develops. They do this through seeding our co-creative consciousness with their agenda. Our collective focus is the root power of their magic. The MIC people often believe that they are literally engaged in a biblical war against an ancient evil that has taken control of much of the earth. Advanced technology from our worldly perspective. The MIC SSP has at least 2 large space stations in Earth's orbit, as well as a number of manned satellites. They are roughly circular in shape and are large space stations with enough facilities for many people to work in various labs and so forth. They are also reported by insiders to possess floating aircraft carriers that look exactly the same as what we saw in the Avengers and Captain America: The Winter Soldier. They have black triangular craft that can travel around our solar system, as well as other stealth-looking varieties. This technology makes them feel that if anything else was going on in our solar system, they would be able to see it. When they see the crafts from other programs or of any of a number of ET races, they are simply told that these craft are ours. They are told that they are not on a need-to-know basis about that particular program and not to speak about their sighting with anyone. It is very compartmentalized. The Cabal is a very, very intelligent group. They built the MIC SSP from the very beginning to be disclosed at some point as a protective deception to hide the deeper level secret space program. If anyone in the military-industrial complex secret space program ranks made unwanted technological or informational breakthroughs, they would be quietly plucked out, just as occurs here in our own level of the cover-up. Therefore, no one in the MIC secret space program will successfully discover portals that take them outside our solar system, as one of many examples. Certain areas are cordoned off to them as no-fly zones, so they do not see the advanced ET civilizations that already exist in our solar system. If someone sees something they shouldn't have, and the idea that it is one of ours doesn't stick, they very likely would disappear, or be reassigned. The Cabal knew that if the people in the MIC SSP truly believed what they were being told was the whole and complete truth, none of them could ever threaten the partial disclosure scenario. They could come forward and fight vigorously against any alternative view of reality because they believed in their heart and soul that they had been given the whole and complete truth. This is precisely what was happening with Sigmund, the commanding MIC officer who interrogated me, as we will review in a minute. They believe we are alone. The MIC SSP are told that we cannot travel outside our solar system. This is due to gravitational and energetic conditions at the boundary of our heliosphere that make any escape impossible with their current technology. NASA has already revealed gravitational anomalies with our Pioneer deep space probes as they travel closer to the boundary of our solar system, setting the stage for this announcement. The MIC folks are also told that there is no need for us to go anywhere else, as we are already surrounded by an embarrassment of riches beyond our wildest dreams. There are many impressive prehistoric intelligent ruins to explore here, from what they call the ancient builder race. The oldest of these ruins date back more than 1.8 billion with a B years. Most of their members believe that any ETs have long since come and gone from our solar system. The only exception is time travelers from Earth's own future who have come back and visited us. Different levels of knowledge, depending upon the group. The MIC secret space program is made up of different military and intelligence groups that have varying levels of knowledge of ETs. Some think there are only 4 or 5 groups visiting us. Some don't think any have been here for thousands of years. The top brass of each branch have basic knowledge of 50+ other ET groups that have visited us. This knowledge goes back to the 60s and was standard info in the briefings then for NATO and the DoD, etc. It is much more complex than can be summarized in a paragraph or 2. The mid-level narrative. The mid-level personnel have been told that some humans who have time-traveled here from our own future now look like Greys. This is due to evolutionary changes from having lived underground for thousands of years. One of the partial disclosure narratives was designed to focus on this idea, namely that all the human-looking and gray-looking ETs come from competing timelines in our future. The higher-ups usually know about a handful of ETs that are here now, but they are ordered to keep silent about it. Some MIC secret space program groups believe that we are all the blood descendants to varying degrees of pre-Atlantean human ET refugees that they call the Pre-Adamites, as we will discuss. This is also a key feature of the belief systems of the various Cabal groups at the higher levels. The Cabal groups believe they have significantly more pre-Adamite blood than the rest of us, and formed royal bloodlines and elite ruling castes as a result. Energetic changes in our solar system. As Wilcock revealed in The Ascension Mysteries, one of his insiders has worked with the MIC secret space program and has been thoroughly educated in their views as we are explaining them here. The MIC SSP people are also aware that an energetic change is occurring in our solar system. They expect that this will lead to a massive release from the sun in our near future. The classic movie 2001 was intended to pave the way for the MIC program's eventual disclosure. If a sufficiently massive sighting or a well-publicized data dump from a whistleblower got traction in the mainstream media, the MIC secret space program could have been revealed many years earlier. 2001 and 2010 installed all the key pieces of information we would be told over time in the aftermath of that eventual disclosure. If you try to explain to the MIC secret space program that a much more advanced secret space program is operating around them, it is akin to blaspheming a major religion in front of its devoted followers. Pre-Adamites in the ice. Now let's return to our scene where I am now on the MIC secret space program craft, hearing what Sigmund was telling me. Sigmund revealed that he had been stationed at several classified military installations in Antarctica. He had spent time in the very area where the Anshar Inner Earth group had taken me on a reconnaissance flight. He stated that an extremely ancient series of cities had been discovered flash-frozen deep under the ice shelf. He confirmed that there were also many animals and pre-Adamites preserved in the ice. He described the pre-Adamites as beings with elongated skulls, with strangely proportioned bodies that were obviously not designed for Earth's gravity and atmospheric pressure. When we combine this with what Gonzalez told me earlier, and the academic research David compiled in the Ascension Mysteries, it does appear that some of these groups were giants by our standards. Other hybrid groups may have been bred to have more conventional heights and or adapted to Earth's gravity over time by becoming shorter. The history of the Pre-Adamites. According to Sigmund, this Pre-Adamite group had apparently arrived here from another planet in our solar system that was no longer hospitable. They arrived here approximately 55,000 to 65,000 years ago and began to create hybrids of their species and the developing human population. This fit beautifully with what Gonzalez and others had already disclosed, which in turn became the central narrative of the second half of David's The Ascension Mysteries. What we now see as Antarctica was the seemingly mythical lost island of Atlantis. The Buwachi map from 1754 depicts accurate subglacial topography of Antarctica. No one in modern times even saw the continent itself until 1820. Insiders tell us the Buaci, Orontius, Phineas, and other maps were copied over from ancient scrolls in the Vatican Library. The Earth shifted on its rotational axis, perhaps due to a nuclear war, and the water that inundated the continent quickly flash froze into a gigantic ice shelf. Sigmund stated that the hybrid survivors of this catastrophe, who were living on other continents at the time of the Great Flood, completely lost access to their ancient cities for over 10,000 years. These beings then began to breed with the human populations in the regions they were stationed in at the time of the disaster. One major faction of Pre-Adamites was constrained to the Americas, while the other survived in Europe, Africa, and Asia. Tompkins, Aldrin, the Draco, and Antarctica. The 29 embedded German spies Tompkins interviewed during World War II confirmed the Nazis were working with a violent, aggressive reptilian race. This group is humanoid, but with reptilian features. They have been called the Saurians or the Draco, and pose the biggest problem for everyone in our region of the galaxy. Surprisingly, the Draco have a central base of operations in our solar system, including huge under-ice facilities in Antarctica. This makes Buzz Aldrin's latest alleged tweet extremely interesting. We do now know that this tweet was disinformation, but the contents are still important to analyze. We can prove that he had just visited Antarctica while wearing a shirt encouraging us to get to Mars ASAP. We did hear that he was there to tour the pre-Adamite ruins that are now on the verge of being disclosed to us as part of this transition plan. Aldrin fell ill and had to be returned home. The disinfo begins with him allegedly tweeting a pic of an alleged Antarctic pyramid with the words, "We are all in danger. It is evil itself." If this had actually been real and not another internet hoax, it strongly suggested that he was briefed on the existence of the Draco, perhaps off the record, and it nearly gave him a heart attack. Excavation has finally been allowed. My contacts in the SSP Alliance revealed that the Draco have finally allowed the U.S. to excavate new pre-Adamite archaeological sites under the Antarctic ice. They have also granted permission for the small number of surviving pre-Adamites to access these areas once again. These pre-Adamite people look and sound just like us, except that they have elongated skulls that they must keep hidden if they are ever seen in public. David asked me how many of these people still live on Earth. As of now, I do not have any clear intel on their numbers, but it is likely in the thousands, if not more. The amount of ancient technology and information that has been found preserved in huge libraries under the Antarctic ice is staggering. He finally became convinced. I was listening to Sigmund telling me his version of the story and watching his face as he shared the information. He noticed me looking at him and wondering why he was sharing this with me. This caused him to break off from the current topic. He then stated that the data they collected from me the last time we met had the telemetry that I had retained subconsciously from the reconnaissance flight under the ice. This finally convinced him that at least some of what I was saying was true. David asked me for clarification when I first wrote this. Specifically, I had witnessed information on the heads-up displays in the Anshar bus craft I was riding in. Under interrogation, I was able to recall specific telemetry from those displays that proved to be extremely accurate, enough to meet Sigmund's quality standards. Another round. Sigmund then stated that he was going to alter my state of consciousness again to be able to dig deeper into my experiences and see what else he could glean. I told him I would prefer it if he didn't. I would be happy to answer any questions he had. He ignored me and walked over to pick up a small device that had a metallic-looking cone at the end that looked like some sort of antenna. He then put in some sort of earplugs and turned the device on. I heard the same high-pitched noise that I had the last time. At this point, I lost consciousness, as has become the norm when this technology is used. Whatever conversation I have with Sigmund under the influence of this technology is not available to me after it is over. Leaving the craft and catching another ride. The next thing I am able to remember was walking back down the stairs of the craft with both airmen assisting me down the narrow stairs to the parking lot. I walked back home and went into my living room. A blue orb was zigzagging around as if it was waiting for me. This is a phenomenon that has been ongoing since this all started in February 2015. It is the transportation system used by the blue avians. Many people are starting to see blue or purple orbs just as I have been told would occur. This is a key part of our mass awakening process. I indicated that I was ready to be transported and was taken back to the same Mayan breakaway mothership I had been on before. Another meeting with the Mayans. The Mayan breakaway group started out in Mesoamerica, and thanks to a successful ET contact, they were able to migrate off-planet. They have since become advanced enough to develop a unique technology that appears to be based on the use of stone and consciousness. They act as a healing group that have provided treatment to Gonzalez and many other survivors of SSP enslavement and torture. There were now 6 of the Mayans in the room. 3 of them were females. I had only seen a female on one occasion before with any degree of closeness. Gonzalez was standing over by the floating stone console looking at it, while a Mayan was working the controls. He directed his attention to me and greeted me. He walked up and scanned me with the same black stone sphere that he held in his palm the last time. He smiled, and as he lifted it up, he said, "Please focus your attention on the magic 8-ball." He then scanned my head again while I tried to focus on the black stone sphere as he requested. Once he finished his scan, he turned and walked over to the floating console and somehow placed the stone sphere into the side of it. He then looked over at the Mayans. They then went into the next room where another stone console was floating and gave us some privacy. Seeding info into the MIC secret space program. Gonzalez stated that he was sorry he couldn't share some of the details about why I was being abducted and interrogated up until now. He stated that this was part of an operation that was seeding information into the ranks of this MIC secret space program. Apparently, many of them are disillusioned and questioning whether or not they were indeed at the top of the intelligence totem pole, as they had been led to believe. He stated that if this information gets to the right people within the MIC secret space program, it could hinder the wider plans of doing a partial disclosure of their program. These individuals now felt there was much more going on in the programs than they had been told. Gonzalez further communicated that I had to be unaware of this operation, so the interrogators would not figure out this info was being given to them on purpose. I had assumed that a similar scenario was behind why I had been kept so completely in the dark about what was happening to me, and why all of this had been allowed to occur by the SSP Alliance and the Sphere Being Alliance. More on the Pre-Adamites and Antarctica. Gonzalez and I then talked about the conversation I had on board the MIC Secret Space Program's craft regarding the Pre-Adamites. Gonzalez confirmed that he had received the same intelligence from some of his SSP Alliance contacts. The same data also appeared in the reconnaissance flight telemetry that the Anshar had shared with him. Advanced tech in ancient ruins. Gonzalez soon moved to another topic. He stated that Cabal proxies had discovered pieces of ancient technologies hidden in time capsules in many of the ancient Sumerian ruins. These proxy agents completely razed these ancient ruins to the ground, looking for these time capsules. These groups not only found several pieces of technology inside the walls of these ruins, they also located some new sites buried below them that were much more ancient. He stated that these artifacts were being stored in Mosul, Iraq at the moment. He also stated that one of the reasons such a vigorous battle is occurring in Mosul at this time is because various groups are fighting to recover these artifacts. After these historical sites were destroyed, the Alliance sent operatives to other similar sites across the planet to do sonar scans and try to locate more of these time capsules. He stated that they were doing so in the dead of the night, and were using very advanced technologies to try to detect other anomalies around these ancient sites. The Pre-Adamites want control. According to Gonzalez, the ancient technologies that were discovered in Iraq had belonged to this Pre-Adamite group. This group wants the return of these technical artifacts immediately, considering them to be their private and personal property. However, certain factions who are now in possession of them will not turn them over. These are Earth-human proxy groups that the Cabal had sent on behalf of the surviving Pre-Adamites. They got the cosmic equivalent of gold lust when they saw the treasure. What further complicates matters is that there are two different royal bloodlines among these Pre-Adamites. These two groups are in a type of competition over the control of the financial and political systems of various countries. As I have said before, the people we are now calling Pre-Adamites all have psychopathic characteristics by our normal definition of the term. The elongated mitre hats everyone wears in the Vatican are one of the ways they have been able to conceal themselves while still operating amongst us. The surviving Pre-Adamites apparently have blue eyes. A weakening of the Cabal coalition. Gonzalez stated that this argument over the Pre-Adamite ruins meant there was an obvious weakening of the Cabal's coalition. This split in the ranks of these global syndicates was being exploited by the Alliance. It seems that many of these Cabal groups now see that their organization is about to be fully exposed and brought to justice. The disclosures David mentioned in Part 1 did not happen by chance. They are the direct result of the hard work of the Alliance through outlets like WikiLeaks. It appears that many of these people are positioning themselves to cooperate with the Alliance during the prosecution phase. This, of course, is a very helpful thing. David and I have both consistently stressed that whistleblowers should be seen as heroes. It is very important that we not devolve into a witch hunt mentality. Issues with memory. At this point, the stone console behind him started flashing symbols in various colors of light. He turned his attention to the control panel as I noticed two of the Mayans entering the room. All three of them walked to the floating stone console and observed the symbols appearing in an obvious sequence. He glanced over at me and asked me if I was still having issues with my memory. I stated that indeed I had noticed difficulty in remembering things such as my children's birth dates, etc. His forehead wrinkled up a bit. He said he wanted to consult the Mayans to see what type of help they could offer. He then smiled at me as a blue orb entered the room and zipped directly in front of my chest. He continued to smile as he waved goodbye. I was taken to my living room, where I again laid on the couch and fell asleep. Another encounter with the Banished. Over the next 2 days, I was trying to make sense of what had occurred. I attempted to meditate on the experiences to see if I could remember what had happened while I was being interrogated. On the following Saturday, however, I was completely distracted by another encounter with the Banished female that had implanted entity attachments in me months earlier. This had been a highly unpleasant experience where I awoke to her being in a hotel room I was staying in with my family. Everyone else was fast asleep when this happened. She was completely uninvited. As soon as she noticed that I was aware of what was going on, she was able to make me again go unconscious. I had still been recovering from the removal of the entity attachment by Kari a few weeks prior. During this recovery time, Kari had contacted me a few times to let me know my vibration was out of alignment, and they were having difficulty getting through to me. Much of it had to do with the removal of the entity attachments, but some of it had to do with some anger issues I had towards an individual who I was working with. I was still carrying around a bit of trauma and resentment from my previous encounter with the Banished and the number of weeks it took for Kari to let me know I had these entity attachments. Now I found myself face to face with this same woman from the Banished group. I had gotten up extremely early to do some work while my family was still asleep. An unwelcomed intruder. I was once again sitting on my couch with my laptop on the coffee table. Suddenly, I felt static electricity in the air and looked over at the wall where my fireplace was. The wall was starting to warp and bend. I stood up and backed away to the other side of the coffee table from the wall. Right where the wall was warping and bowing inward, the same tall blonde female came walking through. She was taller than I thought I remembered. She was a good 3 or 4 inches taller than me and was wearing a very revealing outfit. She said, "Don't be afraid. I am Mara, and I mean you no harm." I just stood there slack-jawed in disbelief. I was both intrigued and a bit afraid after our last encounter. She sensed how I was feeling and smiled, as if she was pleased by it. She narrowed her eyes and smiled even bigger and began to walk towards me. I had part of the L-shaped couch behind me and the coffee table in front of me. I was thinking of an escape route when all of a sudden there was a brilliant white flash. Just in the nick of time. When my eyes had adjusted, I immediately saw Kari and the 2 men from the Anshar group approaching Mara, who now had a frightened and shocked look on her face. I looked around and noticed that I was in a smaller domed room that had one door that was covered by the hard light force field. I had been portaled into an Anshar, inner Earth city. The 2 Anshar men escorted Mara out of the room and down a corridor. I was still feeling some of the after effects of fear and anxiety from the moments in my living room with Mara. Kari walked briskly up to me, placed her hand on the side of my face, and looked into my eyes. I immediately began to calm down, and my rapid breathing and heartbeat subsided. I asked her why the Banished was back, and what was her intent. Kari stated that her intentions were not honorable, and that they intervened for good reason. It is vitally important to stay positive and loving. Kari then stated that I would not be bothered by Mara again, but that I needed to keep an eye out for more of her kind who will come looking for her eventually. I asked what would happen to Mara. Kari stated that she will be placed in stasis until upcoming events had fully played out. She then gave me a hug and put both of her hands on my shoulders. She looked me in the eyes and told me that I needed to let go of my anger with certain individuals that I am working with, and to focus on getting my vibration back in balance. She gave me that huge infectious smile of hers, and then patted my shoulders and told me she was sending me back now. I was still a little bit shocked and confused from the encounter with Mara, and I'm sure my eyes showed it. Rebalancing my vibratory state. After another brilliant flash of light, I was now standing in the same place I had been in prior to the transport. In the time period since my last update, and up until this point of reporting, I have been brought before raw tier air on 3 occasions. Each of them had to do with the rebalancing of my vibratory state and the frustrating behavior and actions of some people from my inner circle. During these visits, I was able to observe the cosmic scene and noticed that the giant blue spheres were becoming notably more translucent. The 9 metallic spheres were in about the same positions as they had been weeks earlier. Meetings with the Earth Alliance. By this point, we were getting fairly close to the time of the U.S. presidential election, which was indeed extremely contentious, as David had opened up with in Part 1. I had already been told many months ago that the SSP Alliance was in support of either Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump winning the election. Both of these men are aware of the cabal, are not a part of it, and want to see it taken down for the betterment of humanity. Just days before the election, certain allies I had in the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and FEMA reconnected with me. They were very excited because their data showed that Trump was likely to win. Hack attacks from a panicked cabal. This next phase of insider contact started a few days after I published my last update. It began with a series of hacking attempts on my home computers. 3 of the computers that I use for work began to pop up intrusion alerts. I disconnected from the internet and ran a few security scans on them out of an abundance of caution. I found out these cabal groups have apparently been in a state of panic for weeks, as more and more has been leaked about their involvement in pedophilia and sex slave rings. They are also organ harvesting their young victims to sell on the black market. These are just a few of the crimes being committed. The FBI has had enough. The FBI has been quietly investigating these deplorable crimes for decades. David's own insiders independently confirmed this to him, and it has now gone public, as we saw in Part 1. The FBI investigators had brought this evidence to several attorney generals in the past, only to have them tell the FBI to close their investigations. The FBI soon realized that major changes would have to occur before they would ever be allowed to bring these people to justice. The more they investigated, the more prominent and powerful names began to pop up. It appears that these sex slave and pedophile rings have been associated with close to a third of everyone working in government organizations within the USA and the EU. It was determined that any attempt to prosecute them would be met by roadblocks. This is one key reason why the alliance favored Trump. This appears to be one of the main reasons most of the FBI was behind Donald Trump in the election process. They knew the alliance was in favor of Trump becoming the next president. The FBI have been aware of the alliance for some time. The FBI believed that if Trump won the election, they would finally have their opportunity to bring this evidence to an attorney general who would actually prosecute. This was such a contentious election process that it caused a huge amount of anxiety for people on both sides of the political parties. Former allies returned at the last minute. Since I had gone public, a few of my sources in the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and FEMA had broken off contact with me because of the crackdown on whistleblowers in the Obama administration. The day before the election, all three of these people contacted me and told me that Trump would win. They then began to share quite a lot of inside information with me about the above-mentioned investigations. Not so sure. I have to admit that I was skeptical of Trump winning and completely sickened by the details that were given about these pedophilia rings. I was also a bit suspicious that all three of these individuals contacted me to share intelligence so soon after I was warned that a disinformation campaign against all SSP whistleblowers would occur. It was clear that I would have to vet these sources all over again. Time to gather all the intel. The following night, I was as shocked as everyone else to see Trump actually win the election. I was able to confirm through other sources that these three individuals were not attempting to discredit me. I then contacted them for a full download. I found out that Soros is under investigation by the FBI for all he did prior to the election years before and his involvement in the current riots. Obama appears to be willing to agree to not pardon Hillary if some of his legacy is preserved somehow. It appears Trump and Obama are keeping that option open, but I doubt it will occur after hearing all of the President of the United States ties to the Clinton investigation that keep popping up. There is a very unsettled mood among the establishment types. This was not supposed to happen. They tried to rig the voting, but underestimated the voter turnout for Trump. David captured a photograph of the front page of Huffington Post, now controlled by Verizon, on Election Day. It showed a 98% chance of Hillary winning and a 1.7% chance for Trump. Vote hacking would not be sufficient. It turned out that there were so many voters for Trump that it outpaced the Soros-owned voting machine glitches that they hoped would steal the election. They had calculated that changing approximately 1 out of 100 votes for Hillary in the key swing states would be sufficient, and they were wrong. I was clearly told that Soros was financing most of the riots right now, as I just said. There are also lots of revenge attacks occurring against Russia from cabal-type groups. I found out that things are very bumpy right now between the alliance and cabal. They were not supposed to lose the President of the United States position. Very sickening information. As David shared in Part 1, Dr. Steve Pieczenik revealed that the alliance was behind the Pizzagate emails. They knew exactly what we were going to find when they leaked them. The general population is being prepared for some very sickening information about all levels of influence in the U.S. government. We are going to find out how many people who are very influential from both political parties in the U.S. and the EU have been a part of this massive pedophile ring. This sex slave ring has also been used as a device to blackmail powerful people into paying large sums of money, as well as to influence how they make policy decisions. Once these uncomfortable truths are disclosed, society will not only be ready for more of the truth, they will take to the streets to demand it. Once we see how much is hiding below the surface and that this is just the tip of the iceberg, it will no longer be so easy for any power group to control the people. A visit from a drone. Shortly after I renewed these contacts, my wife came in the back door at about 1 p.m. Central Standard Time and told me a drone was flying all around the back of our house. I ran outside to see a white drone flying around, getting a good look at our house and the parking lot behind us. It then suddenly flew off quickly to its apparent takeoff zone, which had to be pretty far away. I had recently learned that there are similarities to electrogravitic craft in the way drones operate and are controlled. It was further communicated that some of these exotic craft have flight control systems that mimic game controllers or radio remote controls. Full-sized drones will appear in our skies as part of partial disclosure. I was told that in our near future we will see our skies fill with 3- and 4-rotor aircraft that look very similar to the drones that are so popular right now. I was also told these tri- and quadcopters would be almost completely automated, with advanced collision avoidance and autopilot features. This scenario would be part of a limited and partial disclosure program. The Cabal had hoped this would result in humanity not being told about anti-gravity technology until some time later. I was told that the rotors and motors on these drones could be replaced by anti-gravity technologies as they are declassified and become available. These craft will be used quite a lot by the military and police, as well as by various civilian industries. I got interested and purchased my own drone. My interest was piqued to the point where I decided to purchase a drone of my own to learn how to fly them for myself. Since I purchased a cheap drone that doesn't have GPS, all I have done is crash it repeatedly. I don't think it was a coincidence that a drone was performing an open reconnaissance of my house so soon after I bought my own. This visitation happened in the same week where I had purchased a cheap drone at a local electronic toy store, and only 12 hours after I had published my most recent report, A Shadow Revolution. If you have read my last report, then you heard that a shadow revolution is occurring in the USA and is being supported by the Earth Alliance. So much of this battle is occurring in the background and over the internet that we are only now beginning to see it bubbling up into the open. I think we should all be meditating on a smooth transition and a full disclosure for humanity. Never before have the masses been so fed up with the corruption that is blatantly occurring right in front of our eyes with no accountability. We are witnessing the beginning of a grand transition. There will be growing pains for sure, but the end result should make it all worth it. If we can navigate through this time period honorably, we will have set ourselves up for the consciousness renaissance that we have been robbed of for millennia. Antarctica and Cabal surrender. Various world political and religious leaders have been brought down to Antarctica in the last year. The new archaeological finds are a major reason for this. They are excitedly taking tours of the findings. According to sources, the Cabal plans on fleeing to an island in New Zealand, certain areas of South America, and Antarctica. If so, these meetings may very well be a signal to the Alliance that key members of these secret Earth syndicates are preparing to escape justice from an angry American populace. The Cabal had believed they could steal the election and once again escape their fates. They were wrong. Perhaps the strangest development of all was when U.S. top diplomat John Kerry flew down to Antarctica right on Election Day. Buzz Aldrin visited the ruins as well, and something caused him to fall ill and need to leave the area before he was scheduled to. Section 2. Pre-Adamite Ruins. In this section of our fascinating new intel update, we go into even more detail about the pre-Adamite ruins that have been discovered in Antarctica. As it turns out, these fallen angels, the survivors of an epic off-planet war, deliberately landed in what is now Antarctica to take advantage of the high-tech ruins that were much, much older. The idea of all of this intel being exposed now is extremely exciting. The Cabal is already offering tours to their own people of the ruins, and for them, it is like going to a cosmic adult Disneyland. Final section. Introduction by David Wilcock. Corey had put together everything you just read in the first section before our latest Gaia taping. In fact, the write-up was an essential element of organizing his thoughts for our interviews. Not long after we returned home from the taping, additional surprising experiences happened to both Corey and me. I ended up with a planned power outage that was only supposed to last a few hours, but stretched on well past the time I had to go to bed. Without electricity, the house became cold and dark, and I had to rely on my prepper supplies to live comfortably, which I basically did. A fairly prolonged power outage may occur. I saw that this could be a synchronistic warning of a mass power outage that would occur as we head into the final phase of the Cabal's takedown. There have been long-standing rumors of an approximately 2-week power outage, perhaps a bit longer, as the Alliance goes through the final stages of arresting key Cabal operatives. This is primarily intended to prevent them from fleeing and to minimize panic and civilian casualties during the arrest process. Shortly after my power outage, Corey and I got talking via Skype text, and the results were good enough that we will close out our article with the notes of our conversations. By this point, Corey had new experiences that added even more to our story, but he hadn't had time to write them up yet. We have slightly edited and improved our conversation in order to make it more readable and listenable, and add greater context in certain areas. Conversation between Corey and David. December 3rd, 2016, 2:14 a.m. David: we just had a day-long power outage. Everything was pitch black, and they didn't turn it back on until well after midnight, well after everyone had to sleep in dire cold. What are your thoughts on the 2-week power outage scenario for mass arrests? This seemed like a 5-alarm fire level warning, telling me to get ready for it being a lot longer than one night. Corey: that is why I delivered the message to have a minimum of 2 weeks of supplies. I am definitely ready. Unraveling very quickly. David: it does also appear that the Cabal will create a financial collapse to further try to ruin Trump if nothing else works. Pizzagate was the #1 story on the internet yesterday, as evinced by it being the top of Dig, which is a content aggregator. I photographed that. This whole thing is unraveling very quickly. The more the mainstream media keeps saying there is, quote, no evidence and no victims whatsoever, unquote, the more the kids doing this are waking up and fighting even harder. It's very interesting. So I am seriously wondering if the stuff could hit the fan before the inauguration. They may not be able to hold it off that long, and the Cabal may force things to come to a head sooner than that. Most of the agreements have been made. Corey: things are actually moving at a snail's pace in the background right now. Just about all of the things we talked about that were being negotiated between the Alliance and the Cabal have now been agreed upon, mostly. In the meantime, prepare to see tons of elite connected people resigning from their jobs. They will not flee the country, of course, but will immigrate to a safe zone out of protest of Trump being president and ruining all of their hard work, etc. David: wow, how recently since the election did they come to a full agreement? Corey: most of these agreements were final just before the election, once the likely outcome had become apparent, but many have occurred after the election. David: both of these data points can and should work their way into the update so it is current. I will see to that. Losing power for this long was like a massive cosmic reset point for me. It does make sense that the Cabal would make an agreement once they see what is happening. However, their core teaching is betrayal is the first rule of the order, so it is unlikely that they will ever accept any deal and actually do it. The Antarctic Discovery. Corey: I have now had well over a dozen confirmations that indeed a huge effing discovery was made down in Antarctica. Indeed, there are many, many types of ruins and artifacts strewn out across the continent group of islands, and in underground facilities beneath the glacier-covered land. David, very cool. Corey, the update is going to need an update to get current, but I can take care of that. David, did this Antarctica discovery get facilitated by ice cap melting, allowing new areas to be accessed, then coupled with digging, or was it just the result of excavation? Corey, there was some melting, but mostly years and years of excavating. They use steam blowers to do most of their excavation of artifacts and to create new areas when they need to build, I was told. David, they must have hit the mother lode recently if it took them years to get there. Corey, mother effing lode. Many square miles of new ruins. David, that makes sense about the steam blowers. Are we talking about a Manhattan-sized area of buildings and working technological artifacts? That good? Corey, many square miles of ruins have been detected, with only a small percentage that has actually been excavated thus far. David, so it's not like the ruins were protected in some sort of dome under the ice and left undamaged. They are all trashed up, I assume, but there are still things in there that can be pulled out. Are any of the buildings in a fairly undamaged condition? Corey, they were all flattened, crushed, or knocked over by the events that flash froze the area. They have tons of trees, plants, and wildlife frozen in place, like they were put on pause. They are also finding many pre-Adamite bodies. David, interesting. I expected that everything would have been thoroughly smashed unless there were some very unique conditions. There will be a whole lot of giant animals, sloths, mastodons, toxodons, turtles, and what have you. The biosphere was very different then. Corey, that is absolutely true. They are already pulling out a variety of bodies of flash-frozen prehistoric animals. Corey is being used as a dream symbol. Corey, I just remembered that Kari told me many people are having dreams of me teaching them in small classes in underground bases and in spaceships. This is because several different groups are using me as an avatar in dream contact now, as well as the people putting me in that place subconsciously. That is just freaky stuff and I don't like it. An avatar could be used of me to do anything in most dream states. David, I know the feeling. We've both had thousands of people write in after images of us appear in their dreams. We have to remind them that we are not literally traveling there, nor are we aware of what they experienced. Dreams are symbolic and metaphorical in nature, and based on the work we are doing, these symbols usually represent people's transcendent aspect in Jungian terms. Corey, there is quite a lot of dreamscape communication going on from the inner Earth groups, as well as from the ETs and Black Ops government types. People should definitely be paying close attention to whatever they remember right now. The Cabal finally have something to feel positive about. Corey, most of my recent intel has been about ancient technologies and ruins that are causing a major buzz in the elite communities. It is interesting that we circle back to our prehistory during this time of times as we decide how we as a collective will finish. David, maybe it's nice that the elite finally have something to feel positive about. It may make them feel better about signing a deal with the Alliance and actually not lying for once. The discoveries have captured everyone's attention. Corey, these groups are sort of in a lull between battles right now and are all sort of focused on some of the recent discoveries. David, they already have access to really cool stuff, but perhaps this is something that more of the Earth-based groups get to enjoy. Those groups haven't necessarily been able to see the stuff off-planet. So it makes sense that there would be excitement even though there has already been lots of cool stuff to see. Corey, this is stuff they knew or heard in myth that existed under the ice and inside other ruins around the globe. This is the first time anyone has had access to it in roughly 10 to 18,000 years. So yes, they are pumped. David, Buzz appears to have been able to see it as well, only to then have some health issues. Corey, his old heart probably about pounded out of his Mars mission shirt. What are we going to find? David, are any of the buildings intact and upright enough to walk around inside of them? Any power systems still functional? Corey, it sounded like there are some that are not totally flattened above ground. Most of the stuff is below ground in caverns. There are even more ancient sites from these pre-Adamites that are below the ground, just like we would find a site if we did a dig. So they have been doing excavations on the surface, digging below the surface as well as in cavern cities and military complexes that belonged to this ancient group. They are going to make it public. Corey, ancient aliens will go nuts over this stuff. David, will, as in they intend to make this part of the partial disclosure fairly early along? Corey, I presume so, as they are not keeping a very tight lid on these discoveries very well, and it's during a time of an agreed-upon agenda for partial disclosure. David, wow, that will be extremely exciting. They probably would prefer to start with something new and Earth-based before opening it up to anything off-planet. That makes a lot of sense. They are taking out all the good stuff and cleaning it up. David, they are probably scrambling to remove all the good stuff before opening it up any further. That way, they only allow us to discover the things they want discovered. So the best tech probably won't be there. Corey, yes, in fact, they have been moving major artifacts already in the giant electromagnetic subs under the rift system I had mentioned before. David, see, I just know too much of how this group works. Cynical from years of study, I guess. Corey, yep, their tactics have not changed for many hundreds of years. It is hard to be positive knowing all of the stuff going on in the background, but I do the best I can. When did this all start? And what did they find? David, are a majority of the top Cabal people touring there at various times? And when did the discovery actually get excavated to an appreciable degree? Corey, the first discoveries occurred some time back, not sure. They had an idea of what was below the ice after doing very high-tech scans from space. They had been excavating one site and discovered many, many others spread out across what used to be dry ground. This happened over time. They have been studying what they are finding and moving some of it out before bringing in various bigwigs from various secret societies. Then they do tours like the Cabal Disneyland they have in the stasis chamber in Ohio. They are continuing to excavate, but know what is around in the areas where they have cleared away the ice. They are worried that all of the steam excavation could cause the surface of the ice shelf to collapse down on the sites they have uncovered. I think they would have to go public in some sort of a way to go bigger on this excavation and widen it. Why couldn't you talk about this before? David, very interesting. Why was there a feeling of you not being able to discuss this before now? You had about 3 months where you were alluding to this but couldn't go into details. I don't understand what the sensitivity factor was all about. Corey, preservation of public perception. David, I don't get it. They didn't want you to be the first to leak the story? They want to maintain the narrative and do it their own way instead of having it leaked? Corey, the SSP had operatives in place on our end. That kept some of the info from coming out sooner. The elite want to maintain the narrative. Alliance personnel would have been compromised. David, so the SSP Alliance folks are the reason why this discovery is coming out sooner, as in now, through your leaks? Corey, yes, and all SSP and Alliance assets have been removed from the theater. David, right, they had to clean it all up first. Corey, yes, they had assets in place in key labs and installations, etc. All of that intel is being gathered right now. There are tons of freaking labs down there studying all kinds of stuff. David, I am sure there are, or at least there were. Corey, carcasses of prehistoric animals are being packed up and sent on these subs as well. David, that makes sense. Maintaining security for the Alliance. David, is there a reason why you were ordered not to reveal this any sooner, considering these folks are in the Alliance? I am not sure I understand the structure of the timing. Corey, the structure was that we couldn't talk about it without letting the Cabal know who was giving the info. Then they would find out assets were in place, identify who they were, and kill them. So after the assets were removed, the info could come out, most of it. David, wow, that makes perfect sense. Why would you be briefed on sensitive intel? I guess the next question is, why are they telling you anything and then asking you not to leak it considering you could be abducted and have it extracted from you by electrochemical means. I still don't understand why you are getting told things you can't share. Corey: They apparently wanted all this to get to the Air Force guy that questioned me for some reason during the time of extracting the assets. David: Wow, very interesting about Sigmund. Now it is actually all making sense. We don't want to ruin it. David: I guess the only other thing that concerns me is, if we leak this, couldn't the elite turn around and change plans and ensure that no one ever sees it? Or are they so close to defeat that it is going to see the light of day either way? Corey: They may try to cover it up again, but things are so far gone for them it doesn't even matter much. Sigmund has finally figured it out. Corey: Sigmund was causing a lot of problems for the SSP Alliance. He was hunting them down as traitors, pretty much. Once he got this recent info from me, he then turned and has been asking a lot of angry questions from his superiors. So that mission seems to be accomplished for now. David: Unbelievable. Corey: These missions are usually not clear for me as I move through them. It is a hard way to work, for sure. Why couldn't he have gotten the intel through other means? David: I don't know why he couldn't have just pulled phone records from my calls with Jacob and Henry Deacon and compared it to what you were saying. There are far, far, far too many specifics to be fake. Corey: He thinks they are all full of it and are gaming you as well. David: It's not possible to telepathically download so many specifics from each other at that level of complexity. It would be much easier for them to be telling the truth than for it to be some vastly coordinated deception. I just could never buy it, and that is why I have always been behind you 100%. Corey: Yeah, they were trying to figure out if I was just one hell of a psychic pulling this stuff out of the ether. This has been a major shift for the positive. Corey: Whatever the truth really was, old Sigmund was going to get to the bottom of it and find all security leaks for sure. He does not screw around. David: I am very glad to hear he is no longer destroying the SSP Alliance. Corey: It was causing the SSP Alliance members that are part of these programs in the military to be so shy that they were not coming out of cover to report and do command and control work. So yes, this is a big deal. David: And this was the guy at the center of the whole problem. This is very interesting. It is quite a relief that things have turned around. You were used, definitely, but you may have saved the entire full disclosure scene in the process. Has the SSPA's attitude towards us improved any since the Wrangler days? I would imagine this was a major win. Corey: I don't think they've had a lot of time to talk bad about us for a while now. They are very happy Sigmund was leaving them alone right now. Even more intel after Part 1 was published. David's note: This was where we had left off and were ready to go. Right after Part 1 went up, the MIC secret space program seemed very happy. We were then given the following intel. December 7th, 2016, 9:28 a.m. Corey: Wow to the frickin' wow! I got a nice chunk of info about the pre-Adamite ruins and other things discovered in Antarctica during a no-questions briefing this morning. It was from MIC Secret Space Program personnel sent by Sigmund. The pre-Adamites went to Antarctica to re-inhabit ancient builder race ruins. It appears that there was already some ice on Antarctica when the pre-Adamites arrived. It was, of course, in a different position than it is today, much closer to the equator. They went to this semi-tropical region even though it was not as hospitable as other places on the planet for a reason. They were coming here with little technology from a dire situation and wanted to take advantage of ancient builder race ruins and technology in Antarctica. There is at least one ancient builder race ruin complex there that is over 1.8 billion with a B years old. Amazing tech remnants. The researchers found pretty amazing ancient tech remnants. One discovery was a complex of rooms with a gold-copper alloy mix that were in plates covering the ceilings, walls, and floors of this complex. An image of Botatong Temple in Yangon, Burma, could be used for a general vision, not exact, of these gold rooms. They had weird spirals and grooves in the plates. They were obviously for channeling large amounts of electricity. There were other rooms that had a different atmosphere than we breathe, where the gravity is only about 36% of one actual Earth G. cannibalized their own craft. It looks like the Pre-Adamites cannibalized the ancient builder race ruins and technology along with the technology they had brought with them from their original world. It was obvious that they had also cannibalized the craft they arrived in to build the oldest parts of this pre-Adamite main city. Dude, there are so many things they found are finding. They have excavated little of what they have detected. I hope to hear more soon. I was told to keep this under wraps until more info has come in. Sharing it with you, though. David's note. 2 days later, we got authorized to include this material, which I was very happy about. Additional intel came in as well. Dehydrated, mummified bodies. Corey. Amazing ancient ruins were found in large areas of Antarctica, along with flash-frozen prehistoric animals and the inhabitants of the cities at the time, who were all killed in a major catastrophe. They have found these people looked much the same as the bodies that were discovered while excavating the Pompeii, Italy eruption. The Adamites that were not mixed hybrid breeds were indeed in the 12-foot-tall range. The bodies were all dehydrated and looked like rubber or dried leather. Many had slight pot bellies with fat pockets on them, as they did on their chests, like the dreaded man boobs. They were wiry, with very little muscle definition. They were in dress that was very similar to Egyptian, except it was more lavish, colorful, and pretty, with fine linens, etc. Their style was similar to ancient Egypt, but with a slightly different look on the headdresses and garments as well. The highest-ranking MIC SSP officers do know about ETs. December 9th, 2016, 6:39 a.m. Corey. One clarification needs to be made for the article. The highest-ranking officers in the military-industrial complex secret space program know there are a few other ETs here in the solar system. They know of 4 or 5 that frequent the Earth, and over 50 that are known to have visited Earth or our solar system. Only the bigwigs like Sigmund know about the larger number of ETs. They plan on reporting to the masses that either no ETs are here now, or they may introduce us to a human-looking ET that has been here for a long time. David, it is very interesting to hear that the MIC Secret Space Program guys do know about some ETs and are not necessarily kept in the dark. That was new. Corey, yes. Many of the higher-ups know of a handful, like the info in the books that NATO had in the 1960s. There are various factions of military and intel groups that make up the MIC Secret Space Program, all with different narratives. David, we can clarify all of that. Corey, most of lower-level people don't know of aliens, and all of them have wanted to push the ancient aliens info and the story that current ETs are time travelers. That is what they want to do to the public in partial disclosure. David, this is very interesting and useful, and we will definitely work it in there, as I did not know that. Genetic experiments were being conducted. December 10th, 2016, 5:28 a.m. Corey, I am getting more and more in chunks, so to speak. There have been finds of complexes of genetics labs that were creating all sorts of mixes and matches of humanoid species on Earth. They were mixing the DNA of each of the Earth humanoids that were meant to be separate experiments of the genetic farmer races. This created all sorts of human hybrids. They also bred certain traits into small test populations to create different types of humans, giants, etc. This created problems with the genetic farmers. They seemed to also be working on bringing back certain humanoid dinosaur-type races that had perished on Earth long ago. This was a major problem for the genetic farmer races whose current experiments were being contaminated and hijacked. Then this global incident occurred that purged most of the pre-Adamite genetic experiments. The pre-Adamites were breeding these humans as beasts of burden, and to protect and serve them, working mines, etc. This sort of thing had been done to humans on multiple occasions over the last few 100,000 years. Connection to the Casey readings. David, fascinating. Are you aware that the Casey readings said that one of 2 main reasons the Atlanteans were destroyed by the Elohim were that they were playing around with genetics? They were apparently making hybrids between humans and different types of non-human creatures. Corey, no, I haven't looked at the Casey stuff much at all. David, this is just another example of where you hear things that so thoroughly validate stuff I've been talking about for 20 years. It's amazing. The bodies were mummified. David, did they succeed on getting reptilian species made? Corey, There were different iterations of humanoid types of these species, but I don't know how far along they were. Far enough for them to get in trouble, I guess. David. So they literally found these labs with bodies of different types of hybrids growing in the incubators? Corey. Oh, the bodies are in very rubbery, leathery condition. The tests after excavation show that the ice had quite a lot of signs of salty seawater in it. They found a lot of animals and humanoids in the process of being created in these labs. David. Just for specifics, are the humanoids seen inside cylindrical tubes or something along those lines as they are being grown? Corey. Nothing that specific, only that they were found in the process of being created in complexes of genetic labs. David. It would have to be something like that. They would need protection as they were in the growth phase, and they probably make them to order in at least a semi-adult form. Corey. Or grow them inside another beast of burden. The word breed was used. David. That could be, but I think it is more technological. Breeding could still be technological. They were in survival mode. Corey. The pre-Adamites were doing things lower tech than they would like. They were here with very little of their tech or comforts from home. They were in survival mode up until the global event. David. Right, that makes sense. Corey. Not sure if I told you, but I did in my tweet. Many pre-Adamite bodies were found similar to the way bodies were found in Pompeii. It has actually been nicknamed by some as the Pompeii on ice. We need to expand our focus. Corey. Right now, all of these SSP people and these beings are wanting people like us to focus outside of our choirs that we preach to. Books, speaking events, and TV shows that mainly market to people that are already awake is not going to really get us anywhere overall in a larger sense. What we do helps the group consciousness a lot for sure, but is not doing enough to reach a larger group of monkeys, so to speak, to kick that 100th monkey effect into super high gear. This is what is needed for us to achieve the optimal temporal reality. Conclusion. This now brings you up to date with our latest intel. Exciting changes are in store for humanity. It may seem hard to believe any of these things are true. We understand that. Bear in mind that one of the most important reasons why we are doing this is so that the establishment cannot control the narrative. We do not want partial disclosure. With Sigmund now aware that he has been lied to, that whole plan may no longer work. If you start hearing any of the things we have been saying here as mainstream news, then you can remember where you heard it first. We can also expect that many more people will come back to this write-up after such an announcement, or some variant of it, is made. Doing the work. Both David and I are working on releasing as much quality intel as possible in the time window that we still have. If the establishment were to release this intel first, then we would appear to be riding on their coattails. The future is sure to be very interesting, and the telltale signs of an endgame are already visible. This is the greatest football game in our recorded history, and the outcome is not yet defined. You can help steer this towards a positive result by maintaining a positive, loving attitude in your thoughts and actions towards yourself and others. Winning the cosmic battle. This is indeed a cosmic battle between good and evil, and the good guys are winning. The key to success is in not allowing any negative information you encounter to affect your overall positive attitude and co-creation of a better future. You are already seeing major elements of what we have been telling you now appearing as widespread realizations, with plenty of provable evidence. The Cabal's only real chance to stave off defeat and appease the Alliance is disclosure, so we have some very interesting experiences to look forward to in the near future. Your support of our grassroots efforts is vital to our success. You can find out much more about this insider world by subscribing to Gaia and watching our shows. Corey also has had continuing financial distress, so if you feel guided to, please visit spherebeingalliance.com and make a donation. David's new book, The Ascension Mysteries, gives far more context to what we have discussed here, and both of us are eagerly awaiting the announcement of new projects as well. Thanks, and stay tuned. Update by David Wilcock before posting. The story is already leaking. We were urged to get this article out in the strongest possible terms as fast as possible. Corey's article went up Sunday morning, December 11th, after we had worked on it all week as fast as we could. Almost immediately after Corey posted this first draft, the planned intel rollout we were warned about started to happen. It was an incredible, quote-unquote, coincidence that was obviously a very deliberate event. Let me read you this headline now. From the Daily Star. The lost city of Antarctica. Shock claims massive civilization exists beneath a mile of ice. Antarctica is hiding a huge city underneath more than a mile of ice, according to incredible claims, by Rachel O'Donoghue, published December 11, 2016. Subheading beneath the image. Incredible. A lost city hidden underneath sheets of ice would be an astounding find. David's note. Let's read a part of this for ourselves, as this was quite astonishing. Quote, U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Harold Z. Ohlmeyer sent a letter in 1960 to Professor Charles Hapgood saying his theory on the Piri-Reis map was correct. He wrote, quote, the geographical detail shown in the lower part of the map agrees very remarkably with the results of the seismic profile made across the top of the ice cap by the Swedish-British Antarctic expedition of 1949. This indicates the coastline had been mapped before it was covered by the ice cap. This part of Antarctica is ice-free. The ice cap in this region is now about a mile thick. Subheading below the graphic. Theory. The Piri-Reis map of the world appears to show Antarctica without ice. Quote, conspiracists now think Hapgood was right, and he discovered that much of the South Pole was ice-free, and also the location of the lost city of Atlantis. The existence of this mythical utopia was first mentioned in the writings by ancient Greek philosopher Plato in 360 BC. The Atlantis that Plato described was founded by people who were half god and half human, around 9,000 years before his own time. If it did exist, this would be at a similar time that Professor Hapgood said shifts had occurred in the Earth's crust. And just a month ago, further proof of an Antarctic Atlantis emerged in the form of pictures of what appears to be huge pyramids jutting out of its ice. The astounding photos showed structures that bear an uncanny resemblance to the pyramids of Giza, which were built thousands of years ago by the ancient Egyptians. Could all of this mean one of the world's greatest mysteries is about to be unlocked? End quote. Things are getting exciting. I have barely even gotten enough sleep since we were told it was so urgent that we get this out as fast as possible. Now, almost instantaneously after Corey posted the first version, without most of the images included in the one I posted on Divine Cosmos, we get an article that teases exactly what we were telling you about. What are the odds of this being a mere coincidence? As astonishing and over-the-top as this intel sounds, it all lines up beautifully. There is no way we could have invented a story like this simultaneously with the release of such a teaser in the mainstream media. We were already talking about it in part 1. Thank you for your support of this work. This is really starting to get interesting. Update minutes later. Synchronicity already starting. Endgame Part 2 is taking off just as fast as Part 1. The views are flying in after just a few minutes. I just added the Solar Warden image and the hit counter was at a nice even number, 1,600. This is another example of the synchronicity phenomenon I reported in Part 1 happening again. Then, after breaking this into 2 sections and adding some graphics, Part 1 was now at 181,855, 18,1855. A few seconds later, after checking on this update, it got even better. Now the first and the second articles both had repeating digits in their hit counters, 18,1888 and 4399. This phenomenon requires no effort, and it bodes well for an emergence of the truth. Thank you for walking this path of discovery with us. Update, same night, breaking records. This article has taken off so fast that we've now topped 20,000 unique views in just over 5.5 hours. I hit refresh as it was getting close and landed on the quad, 19999. Thank you for sharing and liking this article. You are helping us fight for full disclosure, and we do sincerely appreciate it. Update 2, same night, 3 sets of 24s. As of 10:51 p.m., 7.5 hours after this article went up, we're already approaching 25,000 hits. I hadn't looked at it at all since the above and took some time off. Before going to bed, I randomly decided to refresh it and got a bunch of 24s. There were 2.4K Facebook likes, and the hit counter was at 24,246. As soon as I published this and closed out of the page, the hit counter had a triple in it, 24447. Some people may not believe that this is happening spontaneously, but once you authorize synchronicity by opening your mind, you will be amazed at what starts to happen. These repeating digits catch your attention and tell you that whatever you were just thinking or doing is a sign that you are on the right track, spiritually speaking. No effort is required, it just works. These continue to be very positive signs that we are indeed right on the threshold of some very major breakthroughs. Update 12/12, 11:41 a.m. Antarctic City hits Drudge. Much to our surprise, an upgraded version of the Antarctic Atlantis story, this time on another MSM tabloid, The Sun, made it onto the front page of Drudge Report today. Headline: The Lost City of Antarctica. Massive ancient civilization lies frozen under ice. When you go ahead and click on the link, this is what you see. The Sun. Headline: The Lost City of Antarctica. Shock claims massive ancient civilization lies frozen beneath mile of Antarctic ice and could even be Atlantis. Conspiracy theorists believe that there is a secret city which is frozen over, and it could even be the lost city of Atlantis. By Jennifer Hale, 12th December 2016, 1:05 p.m. David, this was just one day after our article was published. We were urged that if we didn't post this immediately, we would get washed out by MSM disclosures. That has already started to happen, but thankfully, because we worked really hard, we got the jump on them. This article borrows many of the same images and themes from the Star, but has interesting new elements at the end that is even more in line with what we've been revealing. Quote, conspiracy theorists went wild earlier this year when a video claiming to be from the lost city emerged. It appeared to show extensive ancient ruins hidden in the ice, and was a video supposedly left behind by a California TV crew who have been missing since 2002. Archaeologist Jonathan Gray claimed that the U.S. government is trying to